Matthew Driskill is the editor of Aviation, a monthly magazine, and he says that airlines outside the US will benefit from the incident.
United is too big to fail. Again, it's got 14.5% of the market share in the United States, and it's one of the biggest. I mean, part of the problem too, and you mentioned this about the hundreds of millions of viewers who have seen the video. Part of the problem, if I was at United, I would be worried about the effect of my China traffic, because China is going to overtake the United States in the next 10 years, 10 to 20 years. It's probably going to be the biggest aviation market. United has a big stake in China. Delta has a big stake in China. Delta and American have about 8% of the traffic from China to the U.S. United has 20% of that. So that's a market that they cannot afford to upset. If I was a Chinese state carrier, I would certainly have a big smile on my face right now, just because I know that I'm going to get a lot of the business that United's going to lose. And again, you've already been reporting on the boycotts that are taking place, the various societies that are criticizing United. So there's going to be a lot of business that's going to go to some of those carriers who are already ramping up their product. They're spending more on new airplanes. They're spending more on better interiors, better in-flight services, just to try to take market share from the American Airlines that are pinning their hopes on future travel in China.
Let's drill down on this issue with Matt Driskill. He's an editor with Aviation magazine. Matt, welcome to our studio. You were telling me just before you came to air something about the overbooking. Enlighten us.
Well, the problem, and I think everybody needs to realize this, is that United did not actually overbook the flight. All the paying passengers were on the plane, and what they did was they asked for people to get off the plane so that they could put crew members for another flight that I think was that they needed to crew in another city, in the city that the plane was going to. They needed to get that crew to the city so that they could avoid canceling another flight the next day. So technically it wasn't overbooking a little bit.
But talk to us about overbooking. I understand anecdotally that it is something airlines do perhaps have a practice of carrying out. Is this common in Asia?
Absolutely. Well, it's common, especially in the U.S., where you've got a very mature aviation market. It's actually, I think there are some Supreme Court cases that have addressed this issue. So it's enshrined in law, and it's absolutely legal for airlines to do. Is it inconvenient? Is it when you are the victim of an overbooked flight? Yes, I have in the U.S., but actually in Asia, I've been living and working in Asia since 1989. I have never seen an overbooked flight, and I've never actually been at the gate when people announce an overbooked flight. Now, then, that may be because a lot of the flights in Asia, I mean, Singapore doesn't exactly have a domestic air market. I mean, every flight out of Singapore is an international flight. Every flight basically out of Laos and a lot of other countries are international flights. So, China, India, Vietnam, Indonesia, a lot of those countries have a domestic market, so you may see overbooking and things like that. But in the U.S., it's particularly bad. And also in the U.S., I would have to say the airline industry is going through some very difficult times. Nobody really wants to fly in the United States, but they have to.
Well, an incident like this is unlikely to endear passengers to any particular airline. Can we discuss the effect of having a situation where the airline feels they need to invite somebody off of their flight? What is the legitimate way of doing that? Surely not.
Well, I would say invite is kind of an interesting term, considering 3 policemen showed up at this guy's side, at the side of his seat. But let me say this. If both sides in this situation had exercised just a little bit of common sense, then I think this entire thing could have been avoided. If United Airlines had raised the offer, okay, and this was a case of probably where blindly following the rules did not get them anywhere, and it's turned into, as one person put it, I made a note here earlier, brand genocide for the airline. Although I don't think it's that bad, but it's pretty close. But if both sides had just exercised some common sense, if the airline had raised the offer, said, look, not only are we going to pay you the maximum amount, but we're going to give you a first-class upgrade, or we're going to put you in a 5-star hotel. If the passenger who actually was, frankly, was in the wrong, and what he did violated the law, if he had had the common sense to understand that when 3 policemen show up at the side of your seat, this is not the time to get into an argument with 3 policemen, especially in the United States. And I would have to say, personally speaking, that as you know, I grew up in the States and everything else, he's almost, considering the state of affairs with policing in the U.S., I think he's very lucky he didn't get tasered or something like that. I mean, it could have been a lot worse.
Some sobering thoughts there. Matt Driskill, thank you very much for your time today.